Hello Year 12s, this is Act 1 Scene 4 of Richard II, and a sort of brief overview of it really, just to ensure that you feel happy with what's going on. If you are ever unsure, have a look at Spark Notes, it's really quite helpful, tells you all that you might need to know about the text. What do we have here? We have Richard with his acolytes, his disciples, his followers, including in particular Aumerle, who is his cousin and the son of the Duke of York. How does the scene begin? Richard asks Aumerle, "Did you see Bolingbroke on his way?" Aumerle says yes. Richard asks if people were crying about it. Aumerle says, well, some of them were, but not me. The only thing that was making me cry was the wind that was blowing bitterly, the northeast wind. What did Bolingbroke say? What did you say to him? I just said goodbye, just said farewell. That was it, he comments. And that's all that he was prepared to do. He wasn't prepared to counterfeit oppression of such grief. He wasn't prepared to pretend that he was sorry or to say words that would make out like he was sorry. No. He says, "Marry, would the word farewell have lengthened hours and added years to his short banishment, he should have had a volume of farewells. But since it wouldn't, I didn't. So, if I could add more years to his banishment, I would have said goodbye a whole number of times, but because it wasn't going to do that, I didn't bother to say goodbye more than the once." Richard then continues by saying, well, he's our cousin. I can't see him coming back, though. But 'tis doubt when time shall call him home from banishment. I can't see him coming home. And dun dun dun, we have Richard making another fatal mistake. His omniscience, his ability to see all, is sadly lacking, and he is not necessarily demonstrating the qualities of a great king. He carries on, you can see the highlighted section that's already there. "Ourself and Bushy Bagot here in green observed his courtship to the common people, how he did seem to dive into their hearts with humble and familiar courtesy." So the kind of tone here, and the way I tried to read it there, was of Richard musing, pondering Bolingbroke's popularity. And you can see the question on the right hand side over here, which I've just zoomed in on. And at the bottom of this particular version we have some really quite helpful stage directions, which I'll leave you to read. There. So Richard is disdainful of Bolingbroke's popularity and the fact that he courts it and cultivates it. And again, we have another significant flaw in Richard's character, in so much as while popularity maybe shouldn't be an issue for a monarch, well, of course it is. How could it not be? The issue for Richard is that he believes in the divine right of kings, that he's been selected by God, and therefore the common man, the common people, he refers to them, perhaps are something of an irrelevance to him. And this will prove to be something of his undoing as we move forward in the text. Because as we move towards the end of the scene, Green carries on by saying he's gone and these thoughts are gone with him. Not sure that they are. And we have this significant shift and plot development because Green introduces another issue for Richard, which is the rebels in Ireland. Because the rebels in Ireland cause Richard to be distracted from the problems in England. And if Bolingbroke were to return, as he does return to England, and Richard isn't there because he's off fighting another battle, and Bolingbroke is incredibly popular with the common people, well, then we have more significant issues arising for Richard. What good is a king who's not even in the country? Not much good. So Richard says, "We will ourself in person to this war in Ireland, and for our coffers with too great a court and liberal largesse are grown somewhat light, we are enforced to farm our royal realm, the revenue whereof shall furnish us for our affairs in hand. Your coffers is your bank account, your vault. And he is saying that his lifestyle here is so grand, his largesse is so excessive, that he doesn't have much in the way of money in that vault. And what do? Therefore you're going to go and take it from other people. And we have this interesting metaphor here of how Richard is going to farm the realm, rather implying again maybe his superiority complex, the sense that Richard believes that even the dukes and the duchesses, the lords and the ladies, the people of means and wealth in society are so far beneath him that he is going to plunder them. He's going to take their money. They shall furnish them for their war. The problem being that how do you go about taking money? Is you raise taxes, and raising taxes is usually a choice that is politically unsatisfactory for most kings, for most governments. Even to this day, there is always a desire to keep taxes low. Maybe in this time of coronavirus we might see a bit of a change there, but that remains to be seen. He then says, if, however, raising taxes doesn't quite do enough, our substitutes at home shall have blank charters, whereto, when they shall know what men are rich, they shall subscribe them for large sums of gold. So he's saying there that if they do raise taxes, well then the wealthy people who help fund his war will get back some of their money in either the taxes that are raised or in terms of land. So, as it says over here, the question you've got, which is asking about his relationships with other powerful figures, well, if you're a duke of the land and you've got the king saying that he wants to fund this probably unnecessary war in Ireland, and he's going to take your money, take your earnings through tax to do that, well, the chances are that you're not going to think too fondly of the king. And if we add that to Bolingbroke's popularity with the common people, Bolingbroke will be able to return to count on the favour of those common people and many of the dukes, the gentry, the landed, who will also be dissatisfied with the king. What's Richard doing? He's off to Ireland presently. Bushy then enters with some significant news. And Bushy's significant news is, your uncle, he's on his way out. He's very sick. Richard says, where lies he? We have a nice little cliffhanger here, an unnatural one because of the page turn. Let's do it. He's at Ely House. And Richard says, now put it, God, in his physician's mind to help him to his grave immediately. What a pleasant fellow that Richard is. He receives news of his uncle's impending death and asks that it gets sped up by his God. Hopefully not what you think about your uncles, and should you ever be an uncle or an aunt one day, hopefully not what your nieces and nephews would want to happen to you. It reveals Richard to be really quite callous, to be quite cold. Shakespeare is giving us very few reasons to admire Richard, or to even like him at all. And so it means that when he does get his comeuppance, we might not be too sorry about it. Why is Richard so pleased? Because he wants to line those coffers that shall make coats to deck our soldiers for these Irish wars. He's going to plunder Gaunt's estate. And we know, because of our understanding of the plot already so far, that this is the pretext upon which Bolingbroke returns to England. He says that he does not want to become the king. He says that he only wants to gain what is rightfully his father's wealth. But we know that it doesn't quite work out like that. Now at the top of the page you can see the words, Gaunt had supported Richard in quelling the Lord's appellant and defended Richard's divine right to rule. And we know from earlier in the text, Act 1, Scene 3, that Gaunt was even unbiased towards his son. He didn't speak hugely favourably for Bolingbroke because he didn't want to appear biased. So this is another way of Shakespeare reinforcing that Richard is really quite an objectionable character. So this scene really solidifies why Richard is such a flawed character. He wants to raise taxes to fund an unnecessary war so that he can appear great. That war will take him to a foreign land, to Ireland, but a foreign land all the same, and therefore he might be perceived to be abandoning the people. He perceives those common people as unnecessary, not hugely worthy of his time, and that's a significant flaw. And significantly, when his uncle when his uncle is on his deathbed, he celebrates it. And so the unspoken actions of Richard in killing or facilitating the death of Woodstock, his uncle, the Duke of Gloucester, we are now seeing that cold, callous, unsympathetic nature with our own eyes. And perhaps it's worth just finishing this by saying that the other characters on the stage who Richard is with, they are all his followers, they are his acolytes, his disciples, they are his believers, they believe in him. And perhaps because of who he is with, we see Richard's true colours for the first time.